and it's a huge majority. The minor parties basically get wiped out, and then the cycle repeats. See, look, there you go, the cycle repeats. They get pissed off, they flock to when something bad happens, they flock to one leader, they feel pressured, that leader fucks up, they get pissed off again, they leave, they flock back to the smaller party. Ladies and gentlemen, it's April 18th, we are quickly heading into the final full week of the federal election. Let's take a look at the polls. Liberals are down to 191 seats projected on 338 Canada. The Conservatives are up to 123, Bloc holding at 20, NDP at 8, Green Party back down to 1. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before, but the projections for individual ridings gets tricky. So projecting individual seats can be a little hard. That's why they have the large range for them. So whether or not the Greens have one, more than one, less than one, it's hard to say. The big contention for the Greens is Elizabeth May's seat over here in British Columbia. If they... hold on. So you can see it's currently listed as a toss-up between the Conservatives and the Greens. Now, as long as the Greens can maintain one of their seats, they're going to be okay. You know, they're not going to get completely kicked out of Parliament. But it would be nice if at least one of their leaders had a seat. It definitely adds an air of legitimacy to your party. You know, I talk a lot about how we're heading towards a two-party system. I wanted to just reflect on some of the other small parties that Canada has had, the smaller federal parties that we've had throughout our history. Alright, we've only got to go back to 2000, so we go back 25 years before we start to see different parties and we start to see no Greens. You know, like where's the Green Party? The NDP's here. Where's the Green Party? Well, they're not super relevant quite yet. They exist, but no seats quite yet. There are multiple Conservative parties. There's a big one and a little one. This is technically... this was the main one, and then these guys got mad and left, and then they ended up becoming friends again a little while later, which is a very... that's a bit of a recurring theme, but we will get into that. We got the Reform Party, it's another conservative group, split off again from the PCs, or I think the PCs were split off from these groups. We're gonna get more into detail. I'll have a whole video about it. This is really just to give you an idea. We're not going into detail about any of the parties right now. This is just to give you a really vague idea. This is just to show you that we have had other parties before. We've had other small parties before. They tend to not last very long. If they toe one of the main political ideas, like they're basically just different conservatives or different liberals, they end up rejoining. Or they'll form a different party with a different name, but they always end up reforming a larger party. Now take a look at this. This is something interesting. I've talked before about how this country is very liberal. We tend to vote very liberal. Well, you got a situation here. This is the Liberal Party. These guys are left-leaning. This is the Bloc or a progressive party. They're not conservative. They're not right-leaning. Look at this, Conservatives. Seats won. Hold on, a little. There we go. 52 seats. I mean, the Conservatives representing nobody, and they're split. They're a little split. We got to go back to 88 before we see the Conservatives, the PC party, representing all of the Conservatives, and then they split off from each other going forwards. No small parties here, really. You got the NDP as a third, but that's it. There's nobody else. There's nobody else. And this is one of those everybody hated the Liberal situations, which is typically the only time the Conservatives are able to win a majority. Alright, jumping back to the 80s, we can see more small parties, another small Conservative party that doesn't exist anymore. And this was the election that killed them. This was the election where they lost all their seats. All of the voters presumably switching over to the main Conservative party. But this is something I don't know. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know much about these parties. I don't know much about this part of our political history at the moment. This is more research I have to do, and then I'm gonna put out a full video on it because I think it's interesting, all the different federal political parties that we hadn't used to have, and all of the different provincial ones. There's a lot of interesting provincial political parties, and the differences between the two and how they associate and how some of them don't, but that'll be coming out later. 1979, same situation. I mean, You have the two major parties that represent the two main ideas, and then you have two offshoots for each of them that people don't vote for because they feel like they're diluting the vote effectively. Although, I mean, you can basically see that's effectively what happens here. I mean, if the Liberals just captured all these votes, maybe they could win that election. This is why our voting system is just not good. More so-creds, you can see every time, as we go back in time, you can see the so-creds get stronger, which obviously represents them losing strength. Moving forwards, more so-creds. More so-creds, just different so-cred parties. Alrighty, so we have to go back to 58 before we find some fresh faces. We got the so-creds as per usual. Oh, they completely got... Okay, the so-creds got smashed out of this election as well. And then they gained some favor moving forwards, but they completely lost this one. This other party, which is a liberal party, well, you know, they're a left-leaning party. Democratic Socialist, all that fun stuff. Both of these parties in this election losing most of their seats. I mean, if we move forwards again, so-creds. Oh, well, there you go. The so-creds lost all their seats in the last one, gained all of them back in the next one. I mean, these trends demonstrate a clear desire for Canadians to have options. Canadians clearly do not want to be restricted to voting for one of these two colors. And it's liberal or conservatives. You go back as far as you want, it's liberal or conservative. There's a main left-wing party, there's a main right-wing party. That's it, that's all you get. Theoretically, you can have more, but why? It doesn't matter. You just dilute the vote. You dilute the vote of your ideology. You can just see very consistent. They get smashed in an election, presumably. I have to do more research on this. I'm really just kind of guessing right now. But you can kind of just look at these trends, these numbers. One party will win big, and then the same year that, like, one party wins big. Hold on. Oh, okay. So, huge win for one party, big majority. Nobody's, like, and everybody jumps on the majority. Everybody wants Liberals to win. Go to the next election. People are like, screw this, people want better choice. They switch to the smaller parties. They jump over to the Conservatives. Liberals still win. Liberals still win majority. But people are clearly desiring choice. They're fed up. And then they lose. And here you do have a minority, so people are, you know, people aren't feeling the need to completely flock. But we push forwards. And it's a huge majority. The minor parties basically get wiped out. And then the cycle repeats. See, there you go. The cycle repeats. Because people, they get pissed off. They flock to when something bad happens. They flock to one leader. They feel pressured. That leader fucks up. They get pissed off again. They leave. They flock back to the smaller parties. This is a repeating pattern we're starting to see. Like I said, I will have a proper video about this for you soon. Okay. Now we had to go all the way back to 45. But we can see we actually have 6 different parties represented in Parliament. Progressive Party. I assume. Hold on. Sounds pretty progressive to me. Okay. Social Creds, those are the Conservatives. Some of the Conservatives. And then more Liberals. So, but this is, I mean, you hear me yap. I'll yap and yap about how we're primarily... demographics change. I mean, this is really, really old. But we're a liberal country, and we've really always been. So, I mean, if you're a conservative and you want to be represented, you should really favor electoral reform. You should really, really favor that, because a system where people are able to give more than one choice, and a system where, like, just because you're, let's say you vote for the Conservatives in your riding, and they lose in your riding. Well, your vote doesn't mean anything anymore in our system. Like, there's no popular vote. It just doesn't matter. In a better system, it would matter. And if you're a liberal, you should not be interested in giving your party unrestricted access to the government. I mean, 4 terms in a row, which we're about to be looking at here, is a lot. It's a long time for a government to sit in office. I know it's not the same leader anymore, and I certainly hope that things will change, but we're gonna elect a rich guy to run the same party that's been in charge for 10 years now. I'm cautious. I'm a little cautious. Oh, that's a good seat. Okay. I just jumped back to 1925, you know, 100 years ago. I'm not going to go back further than this because I feel like we're starting to... I think the demographics have shifted too much. I think it becomes kind of useless at some point. But we're 100 years back. Okay. We've got 3, 5... I can't count, bro. We have 5 different parties represented in Parliament. Popular vote by province. Okay, sure. We have 5 different parties represented in Parliament. We've got the United Farmers of Alberta. Very cool. Very cool. I love the... like, so this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say we don't have any... like, there's so few small federal parties today, and we're losing them all the time. And, like, this is why it's so important. Like, these... literally, it's a federal party that represents farmers. I mean, imagine if what if you could elect politicians to represent your province's industry in the federal government? That would be very beneficial for you. And I just think a system that allows more of that is probably not a bad thing. But in our system, I just keep yapping. This is it. I promise we're done after this. There's no point in having multiple progressive parties, multiple left-leaning parties, multiple right-leaning parties, because you're just going to split your vote up and you're just going to lose. And that's exactly what happened here. Look at this. Conservatives. 155 seats. Minority government, mind you, but they can work with, well, I guess they would have had to work with these guys, which is good for these guys, but like anybody who voted for this party is just kicking themselves now, because they could have had a progressive party lead them, but now they have a conservative party leading them. Alrighty, we got the most recent Main Street research polling data. It's from yesterday, the 17th. Like I told you, this will keep flipping. It hasn't flipped since our last update, so it still just barely favors Carney, but expect it to keep flipping until the election. Looking at these polls, we might be able to expect that the actual popular vote is tighter than what's being shown, but it's hard to say. But we need to keep in mind what I always tell you. So, you know, right now we got 38 and 43. If this was showing what this individual poll, right? This individual poll taken from just today was showing, these would be on top of each other. But these still wouldn't. I talk about this all the time, so sorry if you're getting bored. But these still wouldn't, because the Liberals are incredibly vote efficient compared to the Conservatives, right? When the Liberals and the Conservatives get the same amount of votes, the Liberals win. The Liberals lost the popular vote to the Conservatives in, I think, 19 and 21. Yep, they lost the popular vote in 21. Yeah, and 19. They lost the popular vote both of these years. And if you remember correctly, or I don't know, if you remember back, I don't know why I said it like that. You think back, this election only happened because Trudeau was upset that they were a minority. Trudeau thought they might be able to win majority, so he held another election. That's why we had to wait until this year to get rid of him. We should have been able to get rid of him 2 years ago, but he held that early election, and then the rule says you only have to have one every 4 years. But you could pretty much have them whenever you want, and then you set the next one back to like a required 4 years, a max 4 years at the most. Something that I'm not sure about, the People's Party is being, like, they're being shown as like a major party. Like, they're being shown as a legitimate contender. Yeah, I think they are running almost a full slate, but they're not gonna win anywhere. I don't think they're projected to win a single seat. Let's, oh, okay, yeah. They're not even on the seat projection. So no, I don't think they're projected to win. They're capturing about 1% of the popular vote. So, like we said, expect these to flip. These are individual polls taken day to day. People's you know, people's feelings shift. The overall poll data doesn't just take, like, this is not just considering yesterday's data. This is considering, oh my god, hold on. Take a look at this. We can see polls going all the way back to the 6th are still being weighted a tiny little bit. Some of them are not at all. And then the weight becomes higher. This is basically just how much they consider it. The weight goes up as you get closer to today. Weight is determined by a couple different things. Here you go. Weight is determined by the date of the survey, the sample size, and the track record of the polling firm. By track record, they don't mean their opinion. Like, they look at statistically, they look at how close the polling firm is to actual election results in the past. Demographic breakdown for that first question. If the election were held today, who would you vote for? Leading voters with undecided totals. Same thing. 1% in favor of Carney. Demographics. Decided and leading. Okay, so yeah, 1% in favor of Carney across the board, it looks like. Demos for you there. Jagmeet? No. Oh yeah, right, favorables. Oh, this is interesting. I think people... Oh no, maybe it's the same. I think it's about the same as it was the other day. Still over 50% of his for his favorables. I believe it's the exact same amount of don't know. Pretty similar. The strong dislike is pretty much to be expected. Yeah, that's most people. That's how most people feel about politicians. Over here for Polyev, we can see. It looks like he has more. Yep, Polyev having slightly more strong favorables, a little less somewhat favorable, slightly more unfavorables. So very slightly more. Very, very, very slightly more. Oh no, 15%? Oh yeah, 21, okay. And they did not bother putting Jagmeet on this one. So that's this whole survey. Okay. We get the most recent Nanos poll as well. Decided only ballot, 45% in favor of the Liberal Party. Breakdown for you. Okay. 45 as we see, just data from before elaborated on. 42% of all voters thinking they're going to pick the Liberals. 34% think they're going to pick cons. 45 have decided going for Liberals. 37 have decided going for cons. This definitely contradicts the data we just looked at, but that's why you have multiple pollsters. That's why you conglomerate all of them into something like 338 or CBC. Okay, now we got preferred Prime Minister. 48% of people preferring Mark Carney as Prime Minister, to only 33% preferring Polyev. Preferred Prime Minister by region. Ooh, a lot of Alberta getting jumped in with the prairies here. If you're wondering why the territories are never represented, each one of them is only a single riding. Like Nunavut's a riding, Yukon's a riding, so, you know, they don't get pulled very much. That's it. Not much else to see on this one. Just information. Alright, we gotta cut today's episode a little short, but I got one news story for you. So we're not gonna talk too much about the actual policies spoken of in the debate. You can find out about that somewhere else if you care. The reality is that most people don't. Most people are using this, and even the leaders know this. This is to generate sound bites. You get a good sound bite, and it works for you positive. You get a bad sound bite, it works negative. No one's really listening to the policy. With that out of the way, here's what we're going to talk about. There is a right-wing... I don't want to call them a media outlet. There's a right-wing group of people called Rebel News. They're a political group. They spend money advertising for the Conservatives' political campaign. They advertise against Mark Carney's political campaign. They are not a news group. Just to clearly establish that. You're allowed to like them, by the way. You're allowed to be like a Rebel News fan. Please don't get mad at me if you are. I'm just telling you empirically, media organizations, they can't give money to politics. They can't blatantly advertise a political party. You're no longer objective when you start doing that. Now, the head of the Canadian Leaders Debates Commission claimed that he wasn't aware that all of these different organizations linked to Rebel News had registered as advocate groups for the elections, for elections candidates. Basically, that means there were like 5 different groups from this Rebel News. Rebel News brought 5 different journalists from 5 different branches of their organization and claimed that they were completely different organizations. And they ended up milking. There was supposed to be a limit on how many questions each organization can ask. And because Rebel News was able to sneak themselves in as 5 different organizations, they asked most of the questions. The Leaders Debate Commission is in a lot of hot water for it. So, just for more backstory on the relationship between Rebel News and the Leaders Debates, the Leaders Commission has tried to forbid them from covering it before, and they went to court and they won. Now, we will cover this in more detail in a couple days when I get back. But the story coming from the Leadership Commission is quite interesting, and it doesn't completely add up. So we'll get more into that soon. Now, this was all on Wednesday night, and there was another debate that happened last night. I'm not sure exactly. I didn't watch it because, you know, these things, I don't really care about debates. I didn't watch it, and I'm having trouble finding information on what went down. With the question asking period for that, but I'll let you guys know when I find out. Alright, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Take care. We'll see you next time.